Okay, fall is here, and so is podcast number 7. Hi everyone, welcome back to studyknits. My name is Allie. If you're new here, I'm a 4th year medical student and I'm living in the US and I obviously love knitting. If you've been following me for a bit, you know that for my whole 4th year, I'm pretty much hopping around new places, a new place every month or so. I'm back in beautiful New York. If you recognize this place, I have filmed here before. I'm staying with my boyfriend's parents while I have another rotation in the area. Very kind of them again. So very happy to be back here in this familiar place instead of a brand new place. It's very nice. I did dye my hair again. If you watched, I think my last podcast, I did like a little trial run of like a temporary hair dye and I really liked it. And then it faded in the most recent video I posted, I think, my like 12 fall sweater patterns. And then I dyed it again this weekend using a permanent dye. It's actually quite a funny / embarrassing story, but I'll tell you guys. I used henna to dye my hair. I've done this before in the past once with a different brand, and it is kind of a greenish color when you mix it all together. It turned my hair a little green for about 48 hours afterwards. I dyed my hair on Saturday night and it was green. And then I was going to record this podcast on Sunday and my hair was still a little green. And I was like, I can't record something and put it on the internet forever with greenish hair. I think it has mostly faded. I don't know how it's going to look through the camera. Overall, I'm happy with it. I think it's very fallish. And the henna hair dye, it's not like a bleach or anything, so it doesn't really damage your hair. It actually gives you like a kind of conditioning treatment. So big fan of using that. It does just kind of, it may or may not turn your hair green. But everybody on Reddit said that it would be okay, and I trusted them, and they came through. Also, last life update, I submitted all of my applications for residency a couple of days ago over the weekend. It was very nerve-wracking, but and a lot of work to get them in, but I'm very excited to have that done. Now I pretty much just sit back, relax, and wait for interviews. Also, something else I like to do in my intro is talk about things that I've learned recently. Since I am a relatively new knitter, I've been knitting for about 4 years. My technical skills are good, but I feel like my working knowledge is ever growing. So I love learning things, especially from people in the YouTube comments. And usually I like to share things that I've learned since the last podcast. From a couple of podcasts ago, I can't remember which one, I knit a my Harvest Tea by Ozetta, and I was talking about how I ended up having like 3 different gauges on the whole pattern and noticed that my gauge was significantly different between knitting in the round and switching to knitting flat, which usually doesn't happen to me. I mean, everybody's gauge, I feel like newer knitters, it's different, but usually it's not that dramatic where I look at it and I can tell it's a different gauge. There's a term for it. It's called rowing out, which is basically when every other row is like looser. So usually it's when your wrong side that you're purling through is a looser tension than the right side, which I thought was interesting. And if you Google it, there's a ton of different fixes online, but that's the term for it, which I didn't know there was a term for it. It's called rowing out. Very interesting. So glad to know that, so that next time I make a Harvest Tea, hopefully I can maybe incorporate some of those solutions into it. Another thing I learned during my last podcast, I talked about how I frogged some finished objects that had been already blocked and essentially unwound them and then like reblocked them. Again, I still don't know the proper term for it, but basically I just unraveled them, like straightened them out, soaked them, and then dried them so that they didn't have the yarn noodle shape. Apparently, someone said once you wind them into like big loops of yarn, again, don't know what that's called, big loops of yarn, you can put them on your yarn swift and steam block them instead of soaking them and then waiting forever for them to dry. If you have a wooden yarn switch though, it may end up warping the wood, but I thought that was a pretty interesting solution as well that would definitely save some time. They took like a full 24 plus hours to all dry out. So that was another interesting solution. And then the other thing, again, if you've been following me for a while, you know I have one-sided beef with my favorite things knitwear for having the incorrect needle conversion in her camisole number 5 pattern. She consistently refers to a US 3 needle as a 3mm needle, which if you Google the chart, that's simply incorrect. If you Google a chart, you'll see a US 3 needle is equivalent to a 3.25mm needle, and a US 2.5 is equivalent to a 3mm needle. So the conversion's off. And I emailed their support, and they responded by telling me that needle size is a suggestion, to use whatever needle size gets me gauge. I was like, that's not the point. I got some comments on my videos saying apparently all of her patterns are that way with wrong needle conversion sizes, and the support is unhelpful in resolving the issue. I opened up the Oslo hat mohair edition pattern. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. She says, yeah, it says it here, circular needles, 3mm, US 3. And I only noticed it because of my beef with my favorite things. I believe they're both Danish knitters. I know Petite Knit is Danish. I don't know if there's something going on over there with the knitting needle sizes. So I need to look into it. This has become like a saga. So I will look into it and I will get back to you all at some point. Maybe now that I've submitted my residency applications and I have all this free time. So I do follow a normal, like a standard podcast format where I talk about finished objects, whips, acquisitions, and then sometimes future plans. And then usually at the end, I chat about my non-knitting interests. So yeah, I think I have 2 finished objects and 4 whips. We got a lot of whips going on. But before we get into that, I'll tell you about what I'm wearing. This is the Field Day jacket by Ozetta. It's just it's a big bulky cardigan. I knit this a while ago using Knitting for Olive heavy merino in Bordeaux, held with 1 strand of Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in claret. It's this gorgeous like heathered red. I initially made this for my boyfriend. He really liked this cardigan and picked out the colors. He loves red. And then it was when my phase as a knitter, when I was basically making everything a size too big. Like I would measure for everything and then make it a size bigger because I didn't want things to be too tight. And then surprise, it was too loose. So it's, I mean, you can tell the sleeves are rolled up and it's massive on me. It was massive on him, and he didn't really ever want to wear an oversized cardigan, which I don't blame him. I, however, love wearing an oversized cardigan, so this is not mine. So happy to have this. I am going to make another one of these later on in the year for him that's actually in his size. So another one of these coming up. But yes, since it feels like fall, I thought I would bust this out as a nice layering piece. I absolutely love this cardigan. All right, let's just get into it. Finished objects. My last summer project. This is my finished twist loop top. This is a pattern by Other Loops. I knit this using Knitting for Olive merino in the color Cloud. I knit this on a 3mm needle, and I used exactly 3 skeins. I used exactly 150 grams of the Knitting for Olive. As you can see, I did a couple of modifications, which I talked about in my previous video, but I'll go over them again. I also made a camisole number 5 earlier in the summer with very similar modifications. This is technically the second twist loop top I've made this year, because I made the first one and it was a full size too big, and so I frogged it and then remade it. So a lot of twist loop this year for me. This is the size medium, and it definitely fits me a lot better because I made the size that I should have made initially based on measurements. So the modifications with this, I added a I think I added 20 extra stitches to the straps to make the straps bulkier, make it less of a halter top, more of a drop shoulder. I did that, and then with the underarm, you can see here, normally in the pattern, you're supposed to cast on stitches for the underarm. I don't like the way that ends up looking for a top, especially when it's a lot of stitches cast on, so I simply incorporated them into the underarm increases so that I didn't have to cast on any stitches. Since I cast on extra stitches for the strap, I just began working the armhole increases later on. So I still end up with the same number of stitches in the body, and I still end up working approximately the same number of rows from the top of the shoulder to joining in the underarms. So overall the dimensions remain the same except for the thicker straps. Additionally, this pattern calls for a folded collar that's in 1x1 rib. However, I really liked the collar of my camisole number 5, so I knit this using the sort of My Favorite Things collar, which is like a double knit collar, and I really like this. I do need to go add some elastic to it. I have tried this on since blocking it, and I definitely think the straps, I think they're too thick. So the first ones were too thin, these were too thick, but it's not so bad that I won't wear it. I will not be remaking this. I decided to make this my last summer project because I knew it would be a layering piece. I could see myself continuing to wear this into fall, winter, and spring, especially because it is knit in merino. I have not worn this since I've finished it, so I can't really speak to the wear of it, but overall I'm quite happy with how this turned out. It knit up quite quickly. I think I spent about 3 weeks working on this, 2 to 3 weeks, while still working on other projects. I'm not a monogamous knitter. I will never be a monogamous knitter, sadly. I love the texture. I love the cables. I made it a little shorter. You're supposed to work basically 3 whole repeats, and I just cut it short, mostly because I was getting lazy. I was getting tired of doing it, and I didn't need it to be super, super long. And so I'm overall very, very happy with how this turned out. I'm really glad that I remade it, and I'm really glad that I remade it this summer while I still had motivation to do it. I just felt the urge to cast it on, and I cast it on and finished it. Yeah, love this. Really nothing else to say about it. I do have plans later this year to make the twist loop sweater, which is basically the sweater version of this pattern, also by Other Loops. And I'm very excited to do that. I realized this summer that I absolutely love a textured knit. I love wearing them. I love knitting them. I think they're incredible. So very, very happy to have made this. Another one that there is not much to say about is this Oslo hat. Oslo hat is a pattern by Petite Knit that I love. This is my 10th regular Oslo hat. I've made 2 Oslo hat mohair editions. I knit this using Filcolana Arwetta in the color brown. No, in the color nougat. This was the other one of my projects that I frogged recently that I had to redo because this is for my boyfriend. I talked about this in the last podcast, but I'll go over it again just for fun. I made a black Oslo hat for him last year that was in the size medium. It's a little too snug on him, but not so snug that it needed to be remade. So when I was going to make this one for him, I made a size large. However, I was casting on during the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl, which was really stressful, and I somehow accidentally cast on 10 extra stitches when making it. So it was a massive hat that had to be remade. I cast on those 10 extra stitches and didn't even realize until I was dividing for the decreases for the brim. And I was like, why are there so many? Why do I have 10 extra stitches? And then I went back through and counted. I was like, I knit the whole thing with 10 extra stitches. Anyways, my own fault. Again, my own careless mistakes. So I frogged it and remade it. And I made this in the size, I would call it like medium and a half. There's about I think an 8 or 12 stitch difference in between the medium and the large. So I basically just cast it on the size medium, but then added 4 additional stitches to make it a little bit bigger than the medium, but still not a full size large. I actually have no idea what I did with the brim increases and decreases. I think I worked an extra round of decreases at some point. I'm not really sure where. This yarn is held double, and I used about, I think, 115 grams, so 2.3 skeins. So I have not seen my boyfriend since I have made this because we're doing long distance. So the next time I see him, I will have him try this on, and I hope it works. If you'll remember from my last podcast, I was talking about how I went to see a live production of Les Mis with my friend, and I brought this with me, and I was knitting with it, and I made a lot of progress, but then I made a lot of mistakes as well. Lots of like holes, lots of times where I only knit with one of the yarns instead of both of the yarns. I was like, oh, whatever, I'll just go back and fix it later. And then I looked at it in the light, and the gauge was a little bit different, and there were a lot of holes, but I was like, it's fine. It's the inside of the hat. It doesn't really matter. And then I went to go put stitch markers in all the places that I need to fix, and there were like 20 holes that I needed to fix. So I ended up frogging it most of my progress, and then I brought it with me. I had a conference to go to, and I brought it with me to the conference, which did have light, so I was able to look down if I felt like I was making any mistakes. So I ended up getting a lot done at that conference. It was a half day, and this is just, and also had it's just the perfect thing to bring for like a meeting knitting, or just like if you're knitting out and about, the perfect thing. And this took a long time to make, if you count making it the first time and then frogging it and then making it again and then frogging it and then making it now this time. So happy it's done. Segueing nicely into my whips. This surprise. This is an Oslo hat, but it's the mohair one. So instead of holding 2 strands of fingering yarn together, you hold a strand of fingering and a strand of mohair with it. It's a little tangled. This is also a hat for me. I am making the size medium, I believe. I'm not very far into it, as you can see. I am making this using Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair, and I believe that the color is ochre brown. I think I purchased this. No, I know I purchased this from their website. I have absolutely no record of me ever purchasing this mohair. I don't know when I purchased it. I don't know if I used a different account. I have no idea. And silly enough, this was back from my early knitting days. I mean, it had to have been. I took off the label for it. So I have no idea what color this is. No idea. From looking online, Googling and things, I think it's ochre brown. One of the ochres, I think. Either way, gorgeous color, gorgeous brown. I am holding this with, again, a little tangled. You can see this is from Long Dog Yarn. This is their fingering weight yarn from the Princess Bride collection in the color Only Mostly Dead. This is gorgeous, kind of pinkish maroon with some tan flecks in it. I initially bought this as a sock set. I think I don't have the mini skein that it came with anymore. I put that in my storage unit because I wasn't going to use it anytime soon. I bought this as a sock set and then wasn't feeling, for whatever reason, was just kind of looking at it. Gorgeous yarn, wasn't really feeling inspired to make socks with them. If I'm being honest, I didn't love the combination of the mini skein with the regular skein. The mini skein was just like a tan. It was tan, kind of a cool colored tan, not tonal at all. It was tan. And I didn't love the idea of tan with this. You're probably asking yourself, why did you buy it? I don't know. I wanted to make a sock with it, and I wanted the sock set. But I absolutely loved this, and I don't know what happened. You know when you just get like an idea in your head? I was just sitting around one day, and I was like, oh my gosh, I could make a hat with that. That would be a gorgeous hat. And I was like, I bet that would look sick with this ochre brown. And so I wound this up and started it immediately. I'm obsessed with the way this looks. I do feel like the ochre brown is overbearing on the maroon and the red bits, but not so much. You can still see them peeking through in some places. Also, I'm growing out my hair. I'm going through a lot of hair changes, if you can't tell. I had bangs last year at one point. I don't know. We're not going to get too deep with it. But I'm growing my hair out. My hair used to be really, really short, and I'm growing it out, and this is the longest it's been in years. I'm telling you this because I've become a hat person now. When I had really, really short hair, I never wore like a baseball hat. I never wore a beanie. Well, I wore beanies, but it was when I lived in Maine, and it was like necessary to wear a beanie so that I didn't freeze. I would put a beanie on and then take it off. It was never like an accessory. It was never like something I wore all day. So this year I've become like a hat person. I've been wearing baseball hats, and I like the way it looks a lot better with my long hair than with my short hair. Again, this is just me. I think people look really cute with beanies and hats with short hair. I just never liked it on myself. That's what kind of why I was starting to think. I was like, well, if I like baseball hats, maybe I'll like beanies this year. So I was like, I need to make myself a cute, fashionable beanie. And I thought about this, and I thought this would be the perfect fall beanie. I think it's going to be great. I'm really excited about this. This is, again, just a mindless knit. I think I have another conference to go to this week, so I will be taking it with me if that is the case. I just can't stop looking at it. I think it's gorgeous, and I'm so excited to start wearing this in the fall and to be a beanie girl. I am using this is why I noticed the discrepancy on her needle size. I'm using a 3mm needle for this. I didn't gauge swatch. Sorry. Oh my god, it's gorgeous. I'm so excited about this. So, and then I'm also excited to use this like special yarn. You know, I love special yarn. We all love special yarn, but I wanted to use it for a project that I would get like a lot of wear out of. And I thought I would get more wear out of a hat than socks. So, very excited to be using this. Oh, well, while we're talking about special yarn, I have more special yarn to talk about. This is my Capital V vest by Rosa Pomar. This is where I've gotten so far. I've joined for the armholes. And now this is a very, very deep V-neck vest, so I'm working back and forth while still working V-neck increases. So I'm about halfway done with this. I am using, this is Surella yarn. This is their DK yarn, classic DK yarn, I think, in the color Ivy from the Eras Collection Part 1. Love Taylor Swift, love knitting, love Surella yarn. I did not know about this yarn dyer when she released the first Eras collection, so I missed out on it, sadly. Probably good though, I would have spent so much money, but I have since gone back and looked at all the colors and just find myself bored and yearning for Taylor Swift yarn, and so I go back and look at the colors, and I always loved this color. It's this gorgeous variegated green. See the whole back. Lovely variegated forest green, one of my favorite colors. And I also love the song Ivy. It's one of my favorite songs. Any like yarn dyer that does a collection that I'm looking at, I have to purchase the yarn, I have to like both the yarn color and the yarn, like what it's named after, what it's inspired by, basically. So when going through the Surella, her Eras collection part 2, I was very picky about the yarn because there were a couple of yarns that I really, really liked the colors, but I didn't love the songs. And I was like, I don't want to, what was the one? Oh, I was like, I don't really want an illicit affairs, like, project. But the color was gorgeous. This gorgeous mauve color. And I was like, I don't love the song, so I didn't get the yarn. But so for this one, loved the color and loved the yarn. Oh, how did I acquire it? Someone that I follow on Instagram was selling their Surella yarn and had 2 skeins of Ivy that they didn't want anymore. So I PayPal'd them money and she mailed it to me. Just goes to show you how trusting the knitting community is. Felt very safe PayPaling her money and her sending me the yarn. So incredible. So I think I'm making size 3. I did pseudo gauge swatch before I started this. You'll be proud of me. However, concerned about having enough yarn to finish this project. And size 3 calls for 507 meters of yarn. I have 458 meters. I'm cutting it close. And so I'm worried about not having enough yarn to finish this. So I didn't want to waste yarn on a gauge swatch. So I basically just knit up the yarn, measured it, and then kind of frogged it and started the project. My gauge is pretty on from what I can remember. I can't remember the numbers that well. And then I measured it again and it was pretty similar. We'll see. My plan with this is to knit the whole thing and see how much yarn I have left. If I don't have enough yarn to work the edging details, the neck and the arms, I'll just buy another yarn that's a similar color and a similar weight, and then have contrasting edging colors. So that's my plan. Would rather not do that, but if I have to do it, I have to do it because I can't acquire more yarn of this. Like, I cast this on right after finishing the twist loop top. It's so nice knitting a DK weight vest after working mostly fingering weight projects for the whole summer. Like, it just flies off the needles. It's incredible. Yeah, so this has taken a day or two's worth of work and I've gotten this far. It's been delightful to knit with. I'm really excited. I really, really like this yarn also. This is my first of the Surella, like of the classic DK that I've used. I absolutely love this. It's really soft. I ordered some from her most recent Eras collection and I'm really, really excited. It makes me even more excited to get this yarn in and to start knitting with it because it's very soft. I cannot wait to wear it and I can't wait to finish this. This is gonna be, hopefully I'll finish it relatively soon. These are not the needles that I'm using, I believe. Yeah, I'm using a 5mm needle with this, but I'm also using it for another project. I just put these bulky needles on as needle stoppers. Yeah, that's about it with this. What's next? I guess while we're talking about Surella yarn, actually the next 3 projects that I'm going to talk about are going to be like hibernating projects, things that I started before summer and then put away and now I've picked back up. This is a basic socken light by Suzanne Muller. Toe up sock. This I actually made a whole sock. It was too big, so I'm remaking them 2 sizes smaller. And I tried it on recently. It fits very well. I am using the Surella, I think it's their nylon sock from their one day only sale from the Chiefs collection. It was called In My Chiefs Era. This was the day of the Super Bowl that they sold this. You had one day only to pre-order it, and I was feeling really sad that day, and I ordered it, and it made me feel better. I picked this back up again during the Chiefs game. I thought it would be fun to knit on while the Chiefs were playing, and I got a lot done. I also am giving double pointed needles another try. When I first started knitting, I bought a really, really, like a low quality pack on Amazon. It was really cheap. They're really low quality. So I bought some Chow double pointed needles to see if I liked it better. And I actually did quite like it a lot. They're still not my favorite. I don't know that I would say I like it more than Magic Loop, but I don't hate it. So I'm going to continue working on it with the double pointed needles. Plus, I feel like it's less tangly. I don't know if you can hear the dog barking. There are 2 dogs here. One of them, she's literally 16 years old. She's very cute, but very old. And she'll sometimes get a little, I don't know if it's confused, but she'll bark for like 30 minutes. Nobody has any idea what she's barking at. I think she just hears something and then she barks and then she forgets what she was barking at and then forgets how long she's been barking, so just keeps barking. So we're just gonna keep barking for the next couple of minutes. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but anyways. Yeah, that's it about this. Nothing much to say. Just gonna be slowly picking at it. I don't think I'll continue talking about this in my podcasts until it's done, but wanted to talk about my little double pointed needle update. Pretty exciting. Along the lines of Suzanne Muller, while we're here, so many nice segues. It's incredible. This is a Berlin scarf. Again, I started this maybe in like March, April of this year, March, April of this year. And I have been slowly picking away at it. When I wanted a sort of bulkier, like a bulkier project over the summer, I would just work on it for a couple of hours. But that's about it. But I'm back full force working at it. I'm using Drops Melody in the color beige to knit this. It's a lovely brushed alpaca, lovely, lovely yarn, a little variegated. It's just, let me get closer. It's just beige, nothing else to say about it. I previously made one of these in the color pearl gray or light gray, I want to say, also Drops Melody. I am making these for my boyfriend's two youngest sisters for Christmas. So one's going to get the gray one, one's going to get this beige one. And I'm pretty much, actually no, I did stall on this for a couple of days because I've gone through, I have like 35 grams left. She recommends at the beginning, basically the fringes of this pattern take about 35 grams total. I found when I knit the gray one that it was more like 10-15 grams, I want to say, and I don't really want to have any leftover yarn, and I wanted to make sure that I don't run out of yarn. So I bought a scale because it was also bugging me that I couldn't weigh my finished objects. I didn't have a scale with me. So I bought a scale on Amazon. It was delivered here. And now it was literally delivered yesterday. So now I can continue working on this scarf. And my plan is, for those that don't know, it's basically just a big tube. There's 2 layers of scarf. You provisionally cast on one end, knit in the tube. My plan was to measure the ball of yarn, knit the fringes here, see how much yarn it took, then pick up from the provisional cast on, knit in a circle, keep knitting the body of the scarf while measuring the yarn every few rows. And then when I get to close to how much yarn it takes for the fringes, stop, work the fringes. The fringes from the last one I remember being, well, one, I didn't read the instructions and had to redo them. Again, that's on me. I can't read. I remember thinking they were going to be really, really tedious, but they really weren't that bad. So I'm definitely like a day or two away from finishing this. And now that I have my scale, I'm hoping to finish it soon. Get on with my Christmas knits. I love gift knitting. That's pretty much it to say about this. It's a pretty great pattern. Very, very easy for 90% of it. You really just knit in a circle. It's bulky, so it's great. I brought this with me to see Beetlejuice in the theater because I previously had knit on this in a movie theater. It's a great dark knitting project. You just go in a circle. And I started knitting and I thought that I had swapped out the needles and put a thicker needle on there as a needle stopper because I needed to use these needles. So I started to knit it and I was like, oh, this feels wrong. It feels too tight. I think it's the wrong needle size. And I didn't bring other needles with me, obviously. And then I wasn't going to use my flashlight and check in the middle of the movie theater. So I worked a couple rows and then stopped. And then I got back home, checked, and it was indeed the correct needle size. So at least I didn't have to frog, but I definitely could have gotten a lot more done on it in the theater if I had simply checked the needles before I left. Again, that's on me. Again, nothing much to say about it. These are pretty simple whips. Last whip. Again, another hibernating whip. My rift sweater. This is another sweater for my boyfriend. This is a pattern by Jared Flood from Brooklyn Tweed. There aren't any standard sizing on this. It's just the sizing is just the bust measurement, which is kind of confusing. So I'm knitting the size 47.25 inches. This is, again, my second time around knitting this. I don't know if you guys know about the sweater curse. The sweater curse is an old wives' tale that if you knit something for your significant other before you are married, it means that your relationship will fail, basically. I think there's a lot of reasons behind it, but I think the most likely reason is you knit somebody something and they don't really realize the amount of effort that it took, and so that puts strain on your relationship. I've knit my boyfriend, obviously, several things. He has a sweater, this cardigan, but that didn't work out, a bunch of hats, some gloves, and now he's getting this sweater. Oh, he has a vest too. So we have our own sweater curse, and it's whatever I make him something, I basically have to make it twice because something goes horribly wrong. His vest, I had to frog. I had to frog the whole thing because I did it wrong. His sweater, I made him one sweater and it just fit really weird. So then I made him a different sweater, and that's nice. This cardigan, obviously, he doesn't wear because it's a size too big, and I'm making him another one. This freaking hat that I had to remake. His other hat I had to remake because it was big. His black hat I didn't have to remake, but it's definitely a size too small. Anyways, and now there's this sweater. I basically made this a size. I made the size smaller. Oh, sorry, I should tell you. This is um, Hip Knit Shop Pot Merino in the color Milk and Cookies. I basically made this a size smaller. I measured him, I swatched, and I was like, he needs this size. This is a bottom up sweater that is knit in panels. So right now I have the whole bottom, the front, and I have the back, then I'm finishing the front. I knit the whole bottom, and then I get to the point where I start to work the underarm shaping. And you can see it's got this really cool ribbed pattern on the side. Basically, the first time I made this, I placed the stitch markers wrong, and the rib pattern for one was like 10 stitches over. And I only noticed when I went to start shaping the underarms. I was like, the stitches aren't adding up. So I basically went back and I like ripped out each of the rows and then used a crochet hook to crochet them back and make the rib pattern, which was fine, great. Then I go through, knit the whole front and back. I knit the first sleeve and I try the sleeve on myself. Again, I'm making this all over long distance, so he's not around to try it on. I make the first sleeve and I try it on my arm, and it's a little snug. It's like fits nicely on my arm. And I was like, this is not going to be good because my arms are smaller than his arms. And I was like, if this fits nicely on my arm, it's going to be too tight on his arm. So the next time I visited him, in my little personal item, which is all I brought with me, I packed the sleeve. And I had him try the sleeve on, and he was like, yeah, this is simply too tight. So I frogged the whole thing. Sad. Frogged the whole thing, and then started working on it earlier this year. Again, I think I had about a few months off where I didn't restart it because I was traumatized. And then I picked it up again, started working on it earlier this year, and stopped for summer. Now I'm back, ready to knit it. I'm almost done with the whole front panel, and then I will work the sleeves and seam it together, and hopefully it fits. If it doesn't fit, I don't know what I'm going to do. Somebody needs to come check on me if it doesn't fit, because I'm not going to be okay. But this has been pretty technically challenging for me. A lot of new techniques and stuff. It requires a lot of attention. This is not something that I can just sit down and mindlessly work on. I mean, at the bottom when it was just knitting in the round, but the arm shaping has been very, very challenging for me. It's required a lot of concentration. I've messed up a ton, but it looks really cool. I'm happy with the results. I'm almost done with the front panel. I have a couple more rows to work, and then I have the arms. I hate seaming, as a lot of us do, and I don't personally love a bottom up garment for myself, mostly because I like to be able to judge. I mean, I just like holding it up and being like, oh, a little more on the body, like a little more on the body. For somebody else, it's not as big of a deal because it's going to be gifted to them anyways. So I'm not going to hand it to them every couple of centimeters and be like, more on the body? You know what I mean? Like, so in that sense, it's fine being bottom up. I don't like the idea that I have to seam it, but it is really nice to be able to work on just a sleeve by itself and not have to have the whole sleeve that is attached to the bulky sweater project. It makes it a bit of a lighter, more transportable project in that sense. And then it's also kind of nice to get like the most boring part, which is the body where you're just going endlessly in a circle. It's nice to get that over with first. He better love this sweater. I'm not making this again. This is the last time that I make the Rift sweater. I will never make it again. Oh, that's it for my whips. That is it for all of the knitting talk. Again, I do usually like to chat about my other non-knitting interests. If you want to stick around for that, but if you were only here for the knitting, I will not be offended if you leave. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And we'll dive right into Formula One if you guys are okay with that, because I had really high hopes for the Singapore Grand Prix. It was kind of a snooze fest, which is fine. Lando won, whatever. Happy for him. The overall race was a snooze fest. What I do want to talk to you all about is Daniel Ricciardo and how Red Bull are doing him so dirty. Because I think we all kind of agree that that was his last race. Like, we're all going to be more surprised if he stays on for the remainder of the season than if they cut him before the rest of the season, which I think speaks to the vibe. It was just really sad watching him after the race, all his like interviews where he was clearly very emotional. It was really sad. Really, in my opinion, like really messed up. He's one of the most seasoned drivers, one of the best drivers, like, and I just feel like whatever. I have a lot of strong thoughts about that. I don't know if I've expressed this to you guys. I've never been a Red Bull fan or a V-Carb fan or a Toro Rosso fan or an AlphaTauri fan. Never. I like a lot of the drivers individually, but I think the team as a whole is cutthroat and is not a good place for... It just seems like a bad working environment, honestly. If we want to put it in like normal people terms. Like the amount of times that they've, in my opinion, unfairly gotten rid of drivers that have been in a seat for like half a season, like Nick DeVries, Pierre Gasly, and have just simply gotten rid of them. And I'm like, do you not understand that people need time to adjust to a new car, a new team, a new race engineer, like a new everything, and you're giving them a couple of races in this really, really high pressure thing and they get out. And I understand that it's sink or swim in Formula One, but come on, like a couple of races is not. I just think it seems like a terrible environment, and you'll never catch me cheering for a Red Bull or any of its sister teams. And I think that's pointed out by what they're doing to Daniel Ricciardo, that they brought him back and, you know, he was incredible and they love him and they're like, you know, he's part of the family, like, and this is what you're going to do to him. Like, there's 6 races left. Come on. There's 6 races left. And you're telling me that they're keeping Checo. I love Checo. I think Checo's great. Checo has not been pulling his weight for the team. Like, that's it. I get the car's not great and Max is able to extract more out of the car, but like you've now are losing the Constructors' Championship and you have one driver who's performing very well and one that's performing kind of and you're telling me you're keeping him the rest of the season? I know it's because Checo brings in like an absurd amount of money. Make it make sense. If you have better insight other than money, let me know. I've been rewatching Only Murders in the Building. Amazing show. I usually, because it's such a good comfort show for me. The episodes are short, the seasons are short. It's great. When they release the new season, I end up going back and rewatching everything that leads up to the new season. So I need to rewatch seasons 1, 2, and 3 before I start season 4. So I'm almost done with season 1, and it's like the perfect fall winter show. I think it's great. I think it's so cozy. It makes me feel ready for fall. It's great. The knitwear is incredible. I love looking at all the knitwear. So I've been really enjoying watching that. And in terms of books, I'm still reading Outlawed by Anna North for my book club with my college friends. And it's kind of weird. I like it. The concept is really interesting. I think I'm also listening to the audiobook, which I don't think I love the audiobook. But overall, it's just kind of weird. I don't really know where it's going. It seems like usually, a plot is kind of like you know where it's going. You have kind of an end in sight. And this one, like, weird things keep happening. And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't really know what the end goal is also for the book. So it's kind of hard for me to enjoy and stay focused on the plot when I don't know what the main characters, like, I know what the main character's end goal is, but I don't know how she's going to achieve that in this book, kind of. Anyways, it's interesting. I'll continue to withhold judgment. That's obviously not true. I've just judged it until the very end. I finished The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Incredible. It is, and I think it's people generally have received it very well. So because it's so popular, it's not just a knockoff of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It definitely scratched the reality TV part of my brain for all the episodes, and the amount of times that my jaw was on the floor about things are insane. And then also, I know that Jen and Zach Affleck, so funny, that they're in New York now, and he goes to medical school now. And as you all know, I'm a medical student, and right now I'm in New York. I don't know where he's at school. I don't know if he's out and about in the hospital scene here. I don't know if I'm ever going to see him in New York. That'd be pretty cool, because then I would have a chat with him. Stern, serious chat that would go something along the lines of, why are you treating your wife so poorly? I also found that I ended up, which is I feel like unique from most reality TV shows. I ended up liking almost all of the main cast, like all of the women except for Whitney. I really liked. I felt like they seemed like great women. Except Whitney just seems to have like not much insight into her own self and what's going on. Can't wait for the next season. If they do another season, they have to do another season. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to talk about. I've run out of things to talk about. So if you made it all the way through, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's it. Enjoy fall. Please enjoy fall. I love fall. I hope you guys love fall as much as I do. Best part of the year. So enjoy it. Get some cozy knitting in. Work on your DK weight projects. Leave the fingering projects of summer behind. And enjoy fall. And thank you again for watching. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.